If we just shut things down for a few weeks to flatten the curve, then we all get back to normal. I remember that we were told that once we had vaccines, that we would achieve herd immunity and get back to normal. I remember that we were told that the vaccines were safe and effective, which, by the way, I believe they are. But we're finding out that they aren't as effective as they believed, especially for the newer variants. So now the administration is pushing for boosters for all, leading to the resignation of some FDA officials in protest. I remember how the administration pressured and colluded with big tech to block free speech and suppress discussion of any medical treatment or theory that the CDC or FDA or World Health Organization did not endorse. Anyone who suggested that the virus might have leaked from a research lab in Wuhan was blocked or banned. Of course, now almost everyone except the Chinese government believes that it is plausible. Now it seems that we are un-American if we refuse to get vaccinated, even if we don't need to be vaccinated. You'll be banned from working in federal government jobs, except the U.S. Postal Service. Why is that? And if you work for a company that has more than 100 employees, you'll be required to be vaccinated also. It seems that vaccinations are so important that not only will you not be able to work in many jobs, but you won't be allowed to enter certain restaurants or attend certain venues if you don't have proof of immunization. And what does that card, that vaccination passport, mean? Unless it's one of the fake ones that you can get online from China, it means that you were vaccinated. Even though we were told at first that those 2 shots, or 1 in the case of the J&J Janssen vaccine, would probably keep you from getting COVID for 5 years. Now we know that we were sold a pig in a poke, or a bill of goods, that vaccination immunity starts to wane within 6 months. The president said that his job was to, quote, protect American people, end quote. Well, if that's the case, then why was there no mention of requiring vaccination for people entering the country legally or otherwise? We have millions of people entering our country who are not required to be fully vaccinated prior to entering. As far as I can tell, that's something that he could mandate. Correct me if I'm wrong. So what am I upset about? Are these mandates harming me? I have my card. Here it is. Team Moderna, yeah. I'm upset because over the last year, medicine and science has gotten a black eye. The rapidity that politicians and bureaucrats have made decisions in the name of science and rulings that affect our lives, all while shouting, "Follow the science," has made my head spin. Doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers who are desperately needed to care for those who are sick, not only with COVID, but with other critical diseases, won't be allowed to work unless vaccinated. But they should be vaccinated, right? Well, in some cases, yes. A survey by the American Medical Association in July of this year showed that 96% of doctors were already vaccinated by that time. Most doctors are not opposed to vaccines. I'm not. But if someone has already had COVID, and many people have, then they have natural immunity. There's still research going on. More needs to be done, but current data is that natural immunity is at least as good and maybe many times better than vaccine immunity. I heard no mention of natural immunity in the president's speech. Correct me if I'm wrong. Medicine is not just one size fits all. Individuals react differently to different treatments, diseases, or stimuli, but requiring or mandating a treatment, in this case vaccines, that are not desired and may not be beneficial, and that do bear some risk, is contrary to good medical judgment. But they say it's for the greater good. Well, many public health experts globally are now admitting that we are past the point of containing or controlling COVID, that it appears it will become endemic. That means that everyone will get COVID if they haven't already had it or are not vaccinated, and that in all likelihood they will get it again. Thankfully, the evidence is that either the first illness or vaccination provide great protection against severe disease, hospitalization, and death. Again, I'm not opposed to vaccination, and I'm not opposed to those with weak immune systems being offered additional boosters. But for those who have already had COVID, There is no scientific basis to say that the benefit of vaccination outweighs the risk. There are no exceptions for those who have documented history of positive COVID tests. There's no exception for those who have positive antibodies or other indication of immunity. There's no exception for those who should not be vaccinated for other reasons. This is not science. That is anti-science. You don't persuade people by mandating something. It only makes them dig their heels in deeper. You don't persuade people by telling them things that are not true or shutting down important debate and discussion. You don't persuade people by saying one thing and personally doing the opposite. I will give kudos to one thing the administration is doing. Many have said for over a year that simple, at-home COVID tests could be made very cheaply at mass quantities and distributed to every family so that they could test and isolate when they're positive. But efforts to do this have been hampered by U.S. health authorities because they wanted to control the data and be able to contact trace everyone who was positive for COVID. I'm not against contact tracing, but not trusting the American people to do the right thing has allowed COVID to spread much quicker and further than it may have otherwise. Just my opinion. What about mask mandates? I'm not opposed to wearing masks. I wear them all the time when I'm treating patients and when I go out into stores and other businesses. But anyone who's been paying attention realizes that all masks are not the same, and just having a little thin piece of cloth across your face is probably worse than worthless. Why isn't the president using his powers to encourage the production of disposable surgical type masks or KN95 type masks that could be produced on a massive scale at very little cost? If you're going to force children to wear masks, which is a debate that I think should be had, provide them with the correct size masks so that they can be used appropriately and disposed of daily. Don't just make a show of being in favor of masks, but not providing masks that do any good. Well, that's about all I wanted to say today. Thanks for watching, and be well. I'll be making more. Do you want to learn? Hi, I'm Dr. Rick Kelly. I'm a practicing physician with over 30 years experience in primary care and talking to patients about their problems and concerns. If you know me, you know I'm not much of a complainer. I'm very easygoing, easy to please, and don't really get upset much. But there are some things about the ongoing COVID pandemic that really bother me. If you agree, please let me know. If you disagree, please tell me why. A lot of this is my opinion, but it is what I'm thinking based on the information that I gather daily. Doctors and patients are told to shut up and just follow what they're being told without questioning it or thinking for themselves. Listen to our betters, as it seems. But that's not how it should be. We're told that unapproved treatments can't be used because there are not large, blinded, controlled research studies that back them up. Yet, we never had any randomized controlled trials on wearing masks to prevent COVID. We never had any random controlled trials on standing at least 6 feet apart or having so many people in a restaurant or meeting room. How many were we allowed to have? 50? 100 in a room? But really, those are just numbers that a person or a group of people pulled out of the air. They were probably based on some past practice or some strong or weak data, but we really don't know, do we? I understand this sounds ludicrous and these guidelines are just common sense. At least that's what they want to imply to us. Flatten the curve, 2 weeks, then 4 weeks, then 2 years? Who knows? My bias is to think these people making the rules and guidelines meant well and mean well. But we really don't know, do we? Some have scoffed at doctors who recommend supplementing with vitamin D and C and zinc to help patients strengthen their immune systems, to fight off infections. Why? because we don't have randomized controlled trials on these for COVID. But some very intelligent and respected experts pointed out that supplementing with vitamins is extremely low risk compared to the potential benefits. So why not give it a try? But many government experts, up until we had the availability of monoclonal antibodies, said we should just tell COVID patients to go home and isolate and wait and see if they got better. But if not, go to the ER. But always wear masks. Wear masks, they say, and socially distance, which that's probably good advice. Well, now we do have a prospective trial out of Bangladesh on mask wearing for prevention of COVID. This study ran from November 2020 to around April 2021. The study was recently released in a preprint and has not undergone peer review. But basically, the study took a group of 340,000 adults and randomly divided them into two groups. One was a control group that received no intervention, and the other was given instructions on mask wearing. They had monitors to observe for compliance and then followed up at different times to see how they did. They found that only about 30% of the intervention group complied with the instructions to wear masks, but still overall the mask group had about 10% less COVID than the control group. Of note was that it appears that those who wore paper surgical masks got the benefit, while those who wore cloth masks did not. We certainly need to get more information as the study is further analyzed and peer-reviewed, but it appears that at least two pieces of data are important. One is that surgical masks help, and the second is that cloth masks don't seem to help, or probably don't. So let's think about school children. If you're going to make them wear masks, then get them some masks that work. And don't just make a show of protecting them by having them wear cloth masks. So what else don't I like? Well, I, like many, was pleased that President Trump pushed for Operation Warp Speed to cut the red tape that usually slows the development of medical treatments and vaccines. I was comfortable with the fact that U.S. Big Pharma did Phase 1 and Phase 2 and 3 trials just like they should, and the data was presented publicly to get the emergency use authorization. We had real people in studies with real outcomes of mild, moderate, or severe illness, or hospitalization and death. I did not like that they excluded those with a history of previous COVID infection and natural immunity from their studies. I assumed that they did not want to skew their data, both on efficacy and adverse events, since those with natural immunity would likely respond different. We just don't know. Now it's less than a year since the 3 vaccines were authorized in the U.S., and the reported efficacy, according to reports from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, has dropped significantly. Instead of providing years of protection, it's down to months. At least 10% of those hospitalized with severe COVID have been fully vaccinated. Who knows how many fully vaccinated are getting mild cases, but they are happening. So now when someone says, I have natural immunity, I don't want to be vaccinated right away, we get experts saying, oh, you need to get vaccinated because we don't know how long natural immunity lasts. Well, I have to reply, we don't know how long vaccine immunity lasts, do we? It certainly is a lot less than we were led to believe when they were first authorized, but we have Delta now, and it is different. So if it is different, then how is it the vaccines are still operating under a EUA, and one of them has gotten full approval based on what seems to me, at least, to be out-of-date data? And now that same company has turned around and said, well, we need boosters because the ones we got approval for aren't lasting long enough. I really hope I'm missing something, but I just don't see it. Now, I'm not anti-vax. I've said that before. I've been encouraging those at risk to get vaccinated from the start. I was first in line to get vaccinated, but I do worry about treatments that haven't been approved to be safe and as effective as they were claimed initially. Now, Pfizer wants approval to dose children down to age 5 without long-term safety data. We don't have months or years of data simply because the shots in COVID haven't been around long enough. I'm not saying that they aren't safe, but do we really know? They say it's safe, But what does safe actually mean? To me, safe means when you're wearing a life vest, it'll keep you from drowning 100% of the time if you use it correctly. Well, I don't think you're too safe if it only keeps you from drowning 80 or 90% of the time, or whatever it is. I'm not opposed to giving vaccines and boosters to the over age 65 when the benefit outweighs the risk. But don't listen to the people that's going to make $1 gazillion from sticking a needle in everything that breathes. I don't blame these companies. Their job is to make money by making something useful. We just need to understand that they have a bias and take that into consideration. Speaking of data and natural immunity, it really bothers me that when you look at the case reports for COVID, you always see unvaccinated and fully vaccinated, or something like that. We don't see a record of how many of the hospitalized or dying had previously had COVID. Maybe it is none, and natural immunity is far superior to vaccines. Well, I don't know, and I really don't think that's the case. Maybe the data is being kept, but they just aren't showing it to us. I don't know. It would really be nice to know, though. I have seen a few vaccine studies that included those with previous COVID infections and studied the antibody response versus those who were vaccinated. Well, that's all well and good, though it's only part of the picture. But in the ones I saw, there were no endpoints like illness, hospitalization, and death. Why are we not getting that data? I'll show you some data from my state, Mississippi. Even though it says weekly charts at the top, I see that each column is one day. Back during May and early June, we were reporting 200 to 300 cases per day. Then late June and into July, the numbers started skyrocketing, so we were up to 5,000 new cases per day for a couple of days in late August. Thankfully, numbers have dropped almost as quickly. On this next chart from May to present, we see the death rate from COVID in Mississippi was averaging 5 or less per day in May and June, and then we got the spike late July into August. And you see that while most were among the not vaccinated or partially vaccinated, there is a noticeable portion that was reported as fully vaccinated. Now, here are several charts which break down the numbers from the last month or 4 weeks. The first is the 40 to 49 age group. During that time period, there were 3,200 per 100,000 individuals, which comes to 3% among the unvaccinated. And less than 0.1% in cases of this age group were fully vaccinated. That's a whopping 34-fold risk reduction. If you look at the hospitalized cases and the number of deaths, you see large reductions also. In real numbers, that means during this 1 month for this age group, there was approximately 4 out of 10,000 risk of death for unvaccinated and 2 out of 100,000 for vaccinated. If you look at the 50 to 64 age group, you see similar reductions and increasing numbers of hospitalizations and death as you'd expect. These numbers do increase in the 65 to 74 age group and then the 75 and older age group. I'm not going to discuss it in this video, but I want you to be aware that there are researchers looking at the effects of COVID on brain structure and function. The study is out of the UK, and they are looking at before and after MRI scans, specifically on the regions that are related to our sense of taste and smell. They're evaluating cognitive tests also to correlate the structural changes seen on MRI. I'll put a link in the description below if you'd like to look at this preprint article. And I'm saying this to highlight that even though we hope everyone who gets COVID has 100% recovery after mild, moderate, or severe disease, it is possible that even mild cases of COVID can cause permanent damage. And lastly, I don't believe that we can opt out of having COVID. COVID not only is in humans, but in multiple animal reservoirs, including cats, dogs, and other pets, and even zoo animals. It is not going away. Another thing we don't know is whether either previous infection or vaccination could prevent some of these long-haul symptoms. We can pray that it does. Well, that's about all I have for today.